pleasure and privilege to have a man with us here tonight who got me my start in the world of professional wrestling as a commentator, none other than the one and only former host of radio's best wrestling talk show in the world, Pro Wrestling Talk, Mr. Larry Katz.
Hey, Penguin!
Thank you, Mike. Nice introduction. It's nice to be back.
Does he look like a penguin or what?
Since I closed down the show, I don't go quite as much as I used to, but I try to keep up with it as best I can, and thank you for having me here tonight. And it's great to see Jim Neidhart here, really.
Yes, yes. It's quite a throwback to the old days for you, isn't it, Larry?
And officially you mentioned the old days because in the 3 years, it's been over 3 years since I decided not to have the show anymore. It just shows Neidhart as an example of how wrestling has changed. The WWF is still the #1, I guess, product in the world as far as, you know, fans and finances generated and so on and so forth.
We're having a little bit of a problem picking you up.
All right, let me adjust my microphone here. I hope you can hear me now.
Okay.
What I was going to say is that, you know, Jim Neidhart is an example of how wrestling has changed since I stopped the show 3 years ago. The guys who made pro wrestling when my show was popular, the Hulk Hogan's, the Randy Savages, they're all with WCW now, but they're sort of past their prime. So WWF now is sort of, they have all the new stars, the new heroes, the guys like, they're not necessarily new, but the ones who've taken over, like The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, people like that. So that, to me, is the way wrestling has changed in the last couple of years.
Absolutely. Not to detract from what you were saying there, Larry, but we have a match going on right now, and the Flying Dutchman will tell us more about it.
Absolutely. Louis Prophet brought yet another man from the Doom Squad, from the depths of hell, the Vampire Warrior, taking on, of course, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, a man you're certainly very familiar with, Larry Katz.
Well, you know, Jim Neidhart was one of the superstars in the WWF for so many years. With, you know, he was tag team champion with Brett for so many years. And I'll tell you, he looks like he's in great shape. You know, I always wonder, you know, about these wrestlers, how and why sometimes they leave the top of the deck, so to speak, like the WWF, and, you know, wind up in something like the WWF, which I respect, but it's certainly not, you know, the top of the game.
No, it is independent professional wrestling, and that's, you know, that's a different set of circumstances from the big leagues such as WWF.
And don't get me wrong, the WWF is great wrestling. Independent wrestling was always, I thought I've done many independent matches as a ring announcer and so on and so forth. And independent wrestling is wonderful, just that for most wrestlers, you know, the WWF is the equivalent of the NBA or the NFL, so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Ron, can you tell us a little bit about the action or the lack thereof going on in the ring right now between Vampire Warrior and Jim the Anvil Neidhart?
Both men are still in the feeling out stages. Obviously, power is the forte of both wrestlers, especially more so for Jim Neidhart. Always slow and plodding, looking to wear his man down, and both seem to be just testing the waters, if you will.
Larry, thinking back to the best match you ever saw with Jim the Anvil Neidhart, which match would you have to say that was?
Mike, that's such a tough question because, excuse me, he had such a varied career. He was not only a villain, but he was a hero at the same time. I would say collectively, when he was teamed with Bret Hart, that those were the best matches I ever saw. I can't really pinpoint one particular match, but I think when he was teamed with Bret Hart, collectively, those were the glory days for Jim Neidhart.
Yes, indeed they were.
Action is spilled outside onto the ring floor. Louis Prophet chasing both men around. Anvil trying to pull him back outside, and now Anvil's got a handful of Prophet. Just enough for the Vampire Warrior to get a shot in. Rake of the eyes, and Anvil is stunned.
I'll tell you, Mike, Neidhart looks to be in excellent shape. Even though he's been out of wrestling, you know, he's not, you know, been in the WWF for a long time, it seems to me.
Well,
it looks like he's in great shape.
No offense, Larry, but it seems as though you seem to think of a wrestler being out of commission if they're not in the big leagues.
No, not necessarily. I just, you know...
it's apples and oranges.
Well, you know, I think you're right. I just sometimes think of the WWF as being the highest rung on the ladder. But, you know, there's a great car here tonight. You got a great crowd.
Yep.
You got some of the best wrestlers in the world on the car here. I know Baxter Booker's here tonight.
Yes, indeed.
I know Typhoon was here tonight.
Yes.
Am I correct? You have Jim the Anvil Neidhart. So don't get me wrong. I think independent wrestling is so
whole change of the face of independent wrestling to where I don't even like to refer to it as independent wrestling anymore. I like to call it the alternative to the large groups like the WWF and WCW. Pound for pound, the wrestlers are equal in caliber.
Yep.
Sure, they may not get the exposure, may not be household names like the Hogan and the Savage, but needless to say, these two men in the ring are charging up the fans, putting on a fantastic exhibition, and everybody seems to love it.
Well, that's my point. I don't think that this wrestling is any different than WWF wrestling. It's just that the perception is that when a wrestler is in the WWF, that he's higher up the ladder. So, no, the wrestling in many of these matches is much better than what the WWF puts on. So, don't get me wrong, Mike.
Absolutely. No offense taken, Larry. I think we've got a situation going on in the ring right now. Tell us more about it, Ron.
Well, the Vampire Warrior was in control, but a series of short elbows gets Neidhart out, but he's clotheslined and taken back to the mat, staying back on top of his man. Excellent strategy so far by the Vampire Warrior, trying to wear Neidhart down. Has not been too successful.
Larry Katz on camera right now. Just had a shot of Larry, and now we're back into the ring.
You know, Mike, this Vampire Warrior, he's impressive looking. He looks to me like a classic wrestler.
Yes.
He's got the blonde hair and the black tights, and he looks like
And then we got a pinfall, near fall,
It looks like
and
a classic
two.
wrestler to me.
Throws him off once again, and the Vampire Warrior on the offensive, back into the corner, choking him over the top rope. The referee quickly breaking up the hold. And once again, we see the chicanery of the manager choking for all he's worth. Neidhart prone in a press pin. Count of two, but his foot is on the ropes.
Well, Larry, if you were to call this match right now, who would you say you would give the advantage to?
At this particular point, I'm going to give the advantage to the Vampire Warrior. He seems to have the upper hand on Neidhart, but wrestling matches can change so quickly that
And by the same
something
token,
like that.
a man like Neidhart could be playing possum.
Right. A mismove here, a slip here, and the direction of a wrestling match, the momentum can change almost as quickly in wrestling matches as it can in any sport.
The Anvil's always been, I'm sorry, Mike, the Anvil's always been an opportunist, looking for his opponent to make a mistake so he can capitalize. Right now, that appears to be the case, and he makes one of his own, charging into the corner. Clubbing double axe handle onto the back, calling his manager, Louis Prophet, into the ring. He's got no business being in here, Larry.
Well, the referee really needs to take over now.